I just want to like reach through the screen and grab this guy by his egg head and just shove it against the wall. God, he makes me so angry. I'm sorry, you guys. I just can't with this guy. Well, hello everybody, and welcome back to your favorite show on the internet, Raw Law Unfiltered, with your favorite host of all time, the DUI Guy. Plus, today, we are going to continue with the scumbag of Massachusetts State Police, Trooper Michael Proctor. A disgrace to the profession, a disgrace to police officers everywhere. The things that he has already said about Karen Reed, and from what I hear about to say in today's episode, are beyond appalling. You will be shocked, you will be disgusted, you will be appalled, you will be saddened that this man is still on the force. I'll be ready to go through all sorts of arrays of emotions. For those of you who are not familiar, Trooper Michael Proctor is the lead investigator into the investigation of the death of John O'Keefe and accusing Karen Reed of the murder when she had nothing to do with it. He is one of the main players in making sure the cover-up goes according to plan. Let's go!
So before you ever went to the crime scene, before you ever went into the house, only having interviewed 3 folks, you had this case nice and wrapped up, didn't you?
Yes, based on the evidence my office uncovered that day, the one shoot discovered at the scene, the one shoot at the hospital, Mr. O'Keefe's injuries, the broken taillight pieces underneath the snow.
Super Proctor, I didn't ask for an explanation. I asked, did you, in your mind, have this case wrapped up? Was it cut and dry in your mind?
Yes.
Bird then writes, so the owner of the house was a woman cop that beat him, question mark, right?
Yes.
And then you wrote, that's what I initially thought after talking to Canton paramedics. Is that right?
Yes.
And then you said, then I saw the guy, correct?
Correct.
So what you meant by that, Trooper Proctor, was according to you, based on your conversations, your initial conversations with the paramedics, the first responders, you were under the impression that this was a beating death. He'd been beaten to death, correct?
The way it was given to me, sir, was
That's yes or
medical.
no? That's yes or no?
He's going to answer the question. If you want to withdraw the question, you can.
No, go ahead.
We entered this investigation with an open mind. It was given to me as a medical situation. And when we saw Mr. O'Keefe's body at the hospital with Sergeant Buchanan and I, we saw his injuries and we were kind of working through how these injuries occurred.
As a matter of fact, both you and Sergeant Buchanan believed that he had suffered the injuries as a result of a physical altercation based on information you received from the paramedics initially, correct?
Initially, we didn't know what we had. We knew there was some significant injuries to Mr. O'Keefe, and we're still figuring out how those injuries occurred.
Well, you just testified. Initially,
What?
we didn't know what we had.
Right.
But 16 hours after the fact, you wrote the following sentence. That's what I initially thought after talking to Canton paramedics, correct?
Correct.
So initially, you did think you knew what you had. A physical altercation leading to a death, correct?
Correct.
There we go. That's it. That's all you wanted him to admit. Your initial thought was that he was beat up. After you saw the body at the hospital, your first thought was, man, this dude got the shit beat out of him. That is huge. Huge for the defense.
So when you just said, initially we didn't know what we had, that wasn't quite true. You did at least have an idea of what you thought you had, correct?
Objection.
Sustained.
It's true, though.
You were aware
Woo. Coming out swinging, Jackson.
that John O'Keefe had suffered a 2-inch laceration to the back of his head, correct?
Yes.
That resulted in a skull fracture, correct?
Correct.
Back of his head with a skull fracture. I don't know if this is the first time in the trial, by the way, that we finally hear those words, other than maybe from like one of the doctors from Good Samaritan that have testified previously before this guy did. But I'm pretty sure, I mean, think about the angle that his head would have to be in order to suffer. I mean, it's just, I can't even try to justify. He would have to be like bending down at an angle, John O'Keefe that is, to suffer a blow in that, like, how do you, skull fracture. He got the snot beat out of him, and they're protecting the cops at the house. There is no other possible theory. It doesn't exist. And to those of you who may be wondering, well, Larry, there are so many players involved. You have the entire family of the Alberts, the entire family of the McCabes. You have Brian Higgins and Carrie Roberts and Julie Roberts and what's his face and what's his name and this guy and that one and this one and that one. How is it even possible that they're all of them coordinating, orchestrating this as laying it on Karen Reed? Wouldn't some of them break by now? Wouldn't some of them crack, come forward, flip, change their testimony? How do you explain that, DUI guy? That makes no sense. You have at least 20 major players, and they're all in cahoots with one another? I mean, come on, Larry, you're starting to sound like a conspiracy theorist. Let me tell you something. Remember a few videos ago in the Jennifer McCabe, I told you that sangre, blood, to protect your own. Because you got to remember, it's not one person just ended up offing John O'Keefe. It was a scuffle. It was a fight. There were multiple parties involved, and multiple parties had to have committed the actual atrocity. So let's say like maybe 2 or 3. One holding him, the other punching him in the back or whatever, beating him with an object, and somebody threw a glass at him, I think, to his face. So there was a lot of distractions happening, a lot of things going on. Maybe John O'Keefe was in the way of something. This was maybe a planned and coordinated attack. And later blaming it on Karen Reed, of course. Maybe Karen Reed was supposed to be in the house with him. Maybe they were going to off them both. And then there would be nobody to investigate, you know? I don't know. It's very, very hard to say what their actual plan was. Because if you remember, Jennifer McCabe testified, you are coming with me to Karen Reed. Like, you are coming to the house with me. I need you in the house. And then when Karen was like, no, I'm not going in the house. Then she was like, oh, well, I guess that plan has been foiled. Well, maybe we'll use you as cannon fodder. We'll use you as the alleged perpetrator of the crime. We'll find a way. But now you have all these people, every single one of these people who has testified so far is now, in some way, shape, or form, has their testimony locked in and is going to be implicated as, at the very least, as an accessory after the fact. Every single one of these people can be charged now, whereas before, maybe it was like 3 or 4 or 5. The actual murderer or murderers, the ones who carried the body outside, and the ones who tried to like cover it up, right? Maybe 5, 6, 7 people at most. Now it involves at least 40 people. Maybe a little bit less, maybe about 30, 35 people. And like Julie Nagel, for instance, like I don't think, is it her? Or there was one, I can't think of, the blonde. I mean, she seemed so terrified. They had to pump her full of so many drugs to come into the courtroom and testify. Like she seemed completely zonked out, the poor woman. It wasn't Julie Nagel, it was another one. I can't remember her name right now. Chat, you probably can mention her name in the comments for the people to find it later when this video actually premieres. But it's like, Larry, come on, man. There's no way that they're all involved in this cover-up. I'm here to tell you that, yes, they are. And yes, it is. Very, very possible. It's actually very, very easy. Once you're in too deep, you just try the best you can and you hope that whatever you buried will never become uncovered. And unfortunately for them, the truth always comes to light. And the truth is coming out to light in this case, and the jury, once they acquit, which I'm very certain that they will, once they acquit Karen Reed, hopefully the federal government is going to continue the investigation that they started, and they're going to target the key players, which are Trooper Michael Proctor, Yuri Buchanan, also known as Yuri Bukaki, Brian Albert, who was the owner of 34 Fairview, and Jennifer McCabe. Those are basically the 4 main players, as we have learned over time. Now, there's some side players like Colin Albert and Brian Higgins and Julie Nagel, Allie McCabe. All of them are side players in this grand scheme of capitulating or implicating, I guess I should say, Karen Reed in her accusations of murder that she did not commit. And Alan Jackson is doing a fine job in showing it to the jury. Let's keep watching.
He had a laceration over his right eye, small laceration just under the eyebrow, correct?
Yes.
Had a laceration on his nose. Is that right?
Correct.
He had patterned scratches on his right arm, abrasions, scratches, correct?
Yes.
And he had no injuries below the neck.
Not that I observed, sir.
Below
Not a
the
single
neck.
broken bone, correct?
Not that I was aware of.
Not a single fracture, correct?
Not that I was aware of.
Not a single bruise below the neck, right?
Not that I observed.
Looks a lot like a physical altercation, doesn't it?
Objection.
Sustained.
Well, it's a valid question. The jury heard it. He looks so guilty. Look at him. He looks like a little lost puppy. Oh my god. He's just like... I'm not answering that. Do I have to answer that? No? Okay.
Bird writes, Bear, let's focus, correct?
Yes.
Who's Bear?
That's another nickname I have.
0095 writes, what does she waffled him mean? And then Bird writes, what's the story, correct?
Correct.
And you wrote, she hit him with her car. Is that right?
Yes.
Have you ever seen, in your experience, have you ever seen a pedestrian who was hit by a 6,000-pound car with no bruises? Ever?
Oh, wow. Wow, what a long pause. Oh my god. He's trying to come up with an answer. He was stumped by that one. He wasn't ready for that question. Huh. Oh, I can't wait to hear what comes out of that mouth.
The pedestrian strikes I've seen have been at high speeds,
Enough to
60
knock
plus.
a person out of his shoe, right?
60 plus miles per hour. So I can't recall right now off the top of my head as far as injuries in the past pedestrian strikes I've attended.
Okay. So someone, you indicated on Monday, under examination by...
Oh, it was such a light strike. She just tapped him and he passed out and then died in the cold after Jennifer Googles how long to die in the cold. What? Is this guy serious?
Mr. Lally, you've seen
He doesn't believe his own testimony.
Correct.
pedestrian strikes, correct?
Yes.
Those are high-speed, extremely high-speed incidents, correct?
Yes.
60 plus miles an hour, right?
I can't recall all the pedestrian strikes I've been to as far as the miles per hour the vehicle is traveling.
Trooper Proctor, let me ask you the question again. Have you ever, yes or no, have you ever, in your experience, seen a vehicle pedestrian incident in which the pedestrian has no bruises?
Objection.
Yes or
Have
no?
you seen that?
I can't recall.
Yeah, because you haven't. You lying scumbag.
After you wrote, she hit him with her car, 5051 writes, oh Jesus, and Bird writes, okay, that's fucked up, correct?
Correct.
And then you wrote what?
Intentional or not?
Intentional or not? Is that right?
Yes.
Your words.
Correct.
0095 then chimes in, gotcha. He was frozen in the driveway and she didn't see him? Question mark. Correct?
Correct.
And you wrote what?
That's another animal we won't be able to prove.
That's another animal we won't be able to prove. Correct?
Correct.
Wow. What? That's another he knows they would never be able to prove that she hit him based on what that Jackson just got him to admit. No broken bones, no bruises, no nothing below the neck. That's another animal we won't be able to prove. He says that to his buddies hours after the death occurs, hours after his investigation is underway. It's not even concluded yet because they conducted interviews on the 30th, the 31st, the 1st. We know this from the previous series if you've not seen it. The Jennifer McCabe gets obliterated, destroyed, eviscerated, evaporated, all of the above. I created like 11 of them. There's 11 episodes. They should have all premiered by now. Go check it out. They're in the playlist. They're awesome. They're so good. And I know it's my work. Hey, I'm biased. Hey, come on. Give me some credit here, huh? Come on. Let's keep watching.
Trooper Proctor, you knew that there were going to be things in this case, even 16 hours into this, that you just admitted you would have zero proof of, correct?
Objection.
We just said that.
Sustained. You can ask it differently.
Did you mean by that statement that this was one of several things that you knew we would not be able to prove?
That statement, that's another animal we won't be able to prove, references the intentional or not part.
You didn't care at that point when you wrote that, you didn't care what you could or could not prove, did you?
Objection.
I'll allow it.
Isn't that what you meant?
No.
You had a narrative that you had developed, and you would pursue it no matter what the proof was. That's what you meant by that statement, correct?
Objection.
Sustained.
Ah, got him! That is exactly what you wanted. You knew that you would never be able to prove that, but you were going to pursue it anyway. And that's exactly what they did, because here we frickin' are. This is day 23 of the trial, and we are, as of the recording of this video, what? Day 27, I think, is Monday? If I'm not mistaken, I could be off by a little. We're almost, and that's not a month, folks. Jury selection started, you ready for this? Jury selection on this case started April 16th. We haven't even counted. This is basically tax day. The day after tax day is when this jury selection on this case started. We started counting days like day 1, day 2, day 3 with trial, actual like testimony. But the trial itself, before witnesses, started April. We are now on month 3. We just started. We are almost halfway through month 3 of this trial, folks. Talk about a waste of taxpayer dollars. What a joke. Just to protect certain individuals in the McCabe and Albert families. Despicable. Absolutely despicable.
What do you mean by that? Thank you, Your Honor. I didn't mean to step on your words. Did you mean by that statement that you were going to pursue this case no matter what the proof might be?
What I meant by that statement was if Miss Reed backed into Mr. O'Keefe intentionally or not.
Interestingly, though, that statement came on the heels of he was frozen in the driveway and she didn't see him. And you wrote in response to that question, that's another animal we won't be able to prove. Correct?
That's not what I was responding to. I was responding to the intentional or not part.
So you were responding to your own statement.
Correct.
Okay.
Wow.
0095 then writes, what's the name of the Canton cop living in Canton? The other one involved. Correct?
Yes.
In other words, that person was asking, tell me the name of the homeowner. Isn't that right?
Yes.
The guy that's the cop, right?
Correct.
And you ignored that question for a second time. Is that right?
Yes.
As a matter of fact, not one time, not once in this entire group chat did you disclose the name Brian Albert, did you?
I don't believe so, no.
You were actively trying to hide Brian Albert's name, at least from this conversation.
Objection.
I'll allow it. Is that what you were trying to do?
Absolutely not.
But you had no problem sharing John O'Keefe's name with your buddies from high school, right?
Correct.
And you had no problem sharing Karen Reed's name with your buddies from high school, correct?
I don't believe I named the defendant.
Not yet, you didn't. Later in the chat.
Okay, correct.
5051 then writes, the BPD have any jurisdiction here because it was their own? Question mark. Is that right?
Yes.
And a few texts later, if you look down a few texts, at about 11 o'clock, you see a text that starts, nah, cat.
Does this guy have a problem with reading comprehension?
I do, sir, yes.
There you go.
You responded, quote, nah, N-A-H, nah, cat, K-A-T-T. It's the total opposite. They have to recuse themselves. Same with Canton. Correct?
That text ends as they have to recuse themselves.
You then text back, I'm sorry, can I have a moment?
Yes.
Flip the next page.
I see where you're at, sir.
How did you end that text?
Same with Canton.
Meaning Canton has to recuse itself also, correct?
That was my understanding.
So by 11 p.m. on January 29th, 2022, there was no question in your mind, Trooper Proctor, that the Canton Police Department was recused from this investigation in all particulars, correct?
That they had taken a step back from participating, yes.
Right. Well, there's one way to put it. They've taken a step back from participating. Another way to put it is they recused themselves completely. Correct?
Correct.
They were not going to be, at least in your mind, they were not to be involved in any way, just like Boston PD was not to be involved in any way. Is that right?
Objection.
Is that what you were thinking?
It was my understanding they were not going to be involved.
Now, if we could turn to page 2537. (5051) writes, but I assume you guys are out to make it cut and dry since it involves cops. Correct?
Yes.
And Bird writes, something stinks. Correct?
Correct.
And then Trooper Proctor, you responded, yeah, but there will be some serious charges brought on the girl. Isn't that right?
That's right.
So in that text exchange, you were saying, yeah, we're out to make it cut and dry. Correct?
No.
You didn't write, yeah, we're going to follow the evidence wherever it takes us. You didn't, did you?
I did not write that.
You didn't write, yeah, we're going to make sure that we investigate this thing fully and thoroughly before making any decisions. You didn't say that, did you?
I did not.
You wrote, yeah, but there will be some serious charges brought on the girl. Isn't that right?
Correct.
And the reason you wrote that is because you knew, as the text above it says, this has to be cut and dry because it involves cops, right?
Objection.
I'm going
true.
to allow that. Is that the reason you wrote it?
No, Your Honor.
And then you indicated, we're going to put serious charges on the girl. Who did you mean by the girl, by the way?
The defendant.
Karen Reed?
Yes, sir.
Pay attention to how Jackson doesn't care. Just like he did with Jennifer McCabe, Jackson doesn't care about Trooper Proctor's answer. When he says, no, absolutely not, no, I didn't, he doesn't grill him because he knows there's no point in going down that path. He's just going to deny. The point of cross-examination is you are testifying. No matter how many times the judge says, ladies and gentlemen of the jury, what the lawyers are saying is not evidence, and you are to disregard all the side Mr. Jackson, can you please stop with the side comments there, sir? Those side comments are literally what make a great lawyer, because he is planting exactly what he needs into the juror's mind so they hear the reality, what really happened in this case, not what the prosecution is trying to paint in this perfect, beautiful little bubble of murder mystery. The reality is this case is corrupt, is laden with corruption, is rotten to the core, is protecting a lot of individuals, and Jackson has a job to do. He needs to convey that to the jurors, and the only way to do that is by talking to them. And since he can't really talk to them until closing directly, what he's doing is he's making these side comments. Now, to the untrained eye, they may seem confusing and improper, but this is brilliant defense lawyer work right here. This is exactly how a cross-examination should be done. Of an uncooperative witness, of course.
So the way that you were going to make it cut and dry, pretty simple.
Who is so deeply entrenched, mind you, who is so deeply entrenched in the corruption and the cover-up of the murder of a Boston cop in Canton.
Just pin it on the girl, right?
Objection.
Is that right?
Absolutely not. Follow the facts and the evidence from that
Oh, now he's quoting Jackson back to him.
day on the 29th, and everything led to Miss Reed hitting Mr. O'Keefe with her vehicle.
But that wasn't the question that you were answering, was it? We're going to follow the evidence and make sure we do this thoroughly. The question you were answering was, I assume you guys, you, Trooper Proctor, and your team are going to, quote, make it cut and dry since it involves cops, meaning Brian Albert, correct?
Incorrect. Doesn't matter to me if the homeowner's a cop, if the victim's a police officer. Myself and everyone in my office investigated this case that Saturday, had an overwhelming amount of evidence that Miss Reed struck Mr. O'Keefe. So it didn't matter to us what their occupation was.
We'll see. Let's keep reading, shall we?
We'll see. Let's keep going, shall we? I mean, that is just so good. Look at Karen's reaction. I wanna go back a few seconds. Watch this again. Watch her face when he says that. Watch it.
It matter to us what their occupation was.
We'll see. Let's keep reading, shall we?
Oh, the smile on her face is just like, we'll see.
5051, a little further down, says, gotta be.
This is epic.
I could only imagine what internal affairs at BPD are trying to get out there. Correct?
Correct.
Meaning, this person, 5051, was opining, at least in your mind, you interpreted that as being Boston police are going to have a lot to answer for, given the fact that another Boston police officer was found dead on that officer's lawn. Correct?
Objection.
What were you thinking?
Can't speak to the mindset to that comment. I wasn't sure how to interpret that one.
All right, next question, Mr. Jackson.
Then 5051 changes gears.
That would be like objection asking for speculation, I suppose, but it's just so good. I can't even pay attention to the objections anymore. I'm so captivated by this testimony and by these questions because they're so good. They're so poignant.
And he writes, she hot at least,
Oh, God.
correct?
Yes.
And what was your response to that?
No. No more, please.
From all accounts, he didn't do a thing wrong. She's a whack job cunt.
From all accounts, he didn't do a thing wrong. She's a whack job cunt. That's what you wrote, correct?
Correct.
16 hours into this investigation,
Yes.
into your objective and unbiased, thorough investigation, correct?
Correct.
Oh,
sir, you didn't have-
my God. How? Okay, first of all, how can you refer to another human being like that? Somebody who, I don't even know what words to use. Let alone, you're not just using it against another person, you're using it against another person who you're going to be claiming has murdered a police officer, boyfriend at the time. A whack job C word to your friends? I just want to like reach through the screen and grab this guy by his egg head and just shove it against the wall. God, he makes me so angry. Oh my God. I'm sorry, you guys. I just can't with this guy. We're gonna continue this tomorrow. I need a refresher. Oh my God. Thank you all for joining me. I hope you learned something. I hope you're able to contain yourselves better than I can. I hope you can maintain better than I can. I'll see you all tomorrow at 6 p.m.